Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. I'm Daniel Norton. I'm a photographer here in New York, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I make videos like this about philosophy, about photography, philosophy of photography, maybe, about technique, stuff like that. So, this comes up because I was having a discussion with other photographer, and we were talking about some of the things that people do or that make happen technically uh, that kind of don't need to happen. Uh, I think because people are so obsessed with technique and so obsessed with um, technology, they look at their equipment like, oh, it has these all these different modes, it does all this different stuff, it can do this, it can output this way, it can do that. That they just think like they need to do that. When in fact, if we just strip things back to their most basic form, that's generally the best way to do things, right? I think sometimes we get a little oversaturated, media oversaturated in general, right? We see all the stuff, so we just want to repeat it. We want to look at it. We want to do that. But what I have to think is doing that, is adding this capability, is doing that thing going to make your work or your life, if you're doing it for pleasure, better or not? Does it make sense for you to do all these extra things if they're just not needed? If it's just something that you're doing to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, right? Or if it's just something you're doing because somebody told you that you have to do it, maybe that's not really the case. The reality is that unless you're doing it this work commercially, and even then, we'll get that to in a second. But unless you're doing it commercially and you have a client there telling you to do something, you don't have to do anything. If somebody looks at your work and they say, even if it's somebody who you respect and you think they know what they're talking about and you really appreciate their work, if they look at your work and they go, oh, you know what, you need to do more of this or less of that, or this isn't whatever, you still need to make that decision if that's true for you. Because some of the coolest stuff that comes out in photography is the stuff that kind of goes against the rules or breaks the rules or changes things or does stuff that's not common. You know, when you see all this stuff, like I'll point to things that are, when the first guy on Instagram that lit a colored smoke bomb, that wasn't something everybody was doing. It was something different and unique and strange. I don't know who did it first, but probably that person didn't even become famous for it, right? Because every single influencer started to do it, and then now somebody might say to you, "Oh, don't do colored smoke bombs. That's really stupid." But the thing is that somebody had to have done it first, right? Somebody does something first, and maybe that is the right thing for you to do. But at the same time, don't feel like you have to do it. I think people just layer on things because they've been told that's required. And that's when you start ending up, and this comes back to that conversation about, it's when I had Paul on a couple days ago, we were talking about like using Photoshop and stuff. When you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, Photoshop or adding things or using specialized lenses or doing whatever, and not because it benefits the image or makes the thing that you're doing better, then you need to think about whether or not that's the right course. Um, Generally speaking, you want to strip away everything that doesn't add or give value to what you're creating. And once you've done that, you have this core element that is the thing. Like I love to use lots of lights, for instance. I don't always use lots of lights. Some of my favorite portraits are just a single light because in those situations, in that place, that was the best thing to do, and that worked, and that gave the mood, and that was the thing that worked for me. Sometimes I use lots of lights, and they're used in a conventional way, and that because that's the right thing to do in that sense. Right being, it's right to create the image that I want to create that's in me, or in your case, that's in you that you're trying to create. So what I'll say is this: don't just do something to do it. Don't just do it because it's there. The idea of like, oh, well, I'm just going to use it because I have it in my bag, or I'm just going to use it because everybody's using it. That's no reason to do something. By the same token, if you feel like something is important to your work, even if it's something that people aren't, let's say, for instance, let's say that you love hard light, and really, I mean, that's soft light is by far the more common for portraits and stuff. But if that's what you love to shoot with it. Don't let anybody tell you that that's wrong. If in the end people appreciate your work and you get clients from it and this kind of stuff, then you're going the right path. And you're enjoying it, right? Because if you have to spend your time creating a bunch of images you don't like, then you probably shouldn't do photography for a living because there's no guarantee you're going to be successful and make a lot of money in photography. It's a very difficult business, so you better at least love it. And that kind of rolls back to what I said I was going to talk about, which is even when you're doing it commercially, it's like you can fire clients, you can say no to clients. It's 100% fine. You don't have to do it. I mean, don't accept a job and then walk out. That's completely unprofessional. But I mean, if somebody comes to you and they say, "Hey, uh, we want you to do this thing," and they show you the example, and it's completely, let's say in my case, because I shoot stuff that's much more, like I don't do a lot of retouching. I usually shoot very straight. I kind of, what I consider more of a naturalistic way of shooting. And they show me this over the top like thing. I will just say it's not what I do, and just walk away because I don't want to do that. That's not what I do. Somebody else does that, and you should hire them because they're going to do it, and they'll do it great. So just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should do it. And we need to make that decision, right? And this is about everything. It's about overusing or using gear that or doing functions in your gear that doesn't need to happen. It's using doing things that people ask you to do that you don't want to do. It's just doing things because they're there. Like, oh look, I have all these filters in Photoshop. I can start adding. Well, this is the one issue that I have, or where I think about like presets. Like the worst thing to me about presets is like when you just shoot something and then you just like, oh look, let me look at the presets, and you add one, which is basically the Instagram thing, right? And then you add it after the fact with nothing really there because it's there. Oh, here, I'll just do it. Just because it's there, you don't have to do it. It's everything's a tool. Use the tools that are appropriate to what you're doing, and you'll create the images that are in you and that showcase your style and your imagination. That's what I would do. So I just wanted to bring that up, even though our conversation was not exactly that, but what came out of it was the idea of, you know, why do something just to do it. And this conversation was about using equipment, but what I'm talking about now is a little more philosophical. Don't just do something to do it. Do it for a reason, right? I mean, maybe when you get a new piece of equipment, try everything that's built into it to see how it works because you want to know that, but don't feel like you have to use it because it's there. So there you go. All you guys shooting tons of slow motion, stop it. No, I'm just kidding. If you like slow motion, don't shoot slow motion. Oh, it's so terrible. If I see one more slow motion video, people walk, one more photographer walking with their camera in slow motion with the music. But hey, listen, if that's what you do, you enjoy it. Anyways, I hope you're all doing well. I will see you tomorrow.